Hello Facebook, welcome back to the HenryHolsters shop. It is Friday evening. Tonight we're talking about OEM. Before I talk about OEM, I have a tool tip. Real simple, quick one. Clear, flexible plastic ruler. I use these a lot. They're useful because you can run them over a holster with contours and transfer lines across. These are really nice. I don't know what brand this one is. It's the See-Through Ruler Company out of Bloomfield, Connecticut. I bought several of these, had them for a long time. I like them a lot. Hey, Chris Williamson. Hey, Bobby Jackson. Tonight I'm going to be talking about you guys and other people. But if you're just joining and you are a holster company, please post your company name in the comments so I can keep track of who is who. Hello, Viper Kydex. If you guys saw my Instagram post, I am giving away this Billet 6061 ashtray tonight at the end of the feed. So if you want to be entered to win the ashtray, share the feed. Hello, Will Silk. I think I saw Mike Hallam come in. Hello, Rusty. Hello, Steven. It's going very well. Thank you for stopping by. One thing I have not explained clearly in previous videos where there are shares and giveaways, if you have a company page and you share on your personal page and you share on your company page, I will count both shares and you'll get double entry. So if there's more than one page you have access to and you can share from multiples and you'll get multiple entries. So this is a nice, chunky, hefty. Now this was an experiment, and so there are still some tool marks on it. It was an idea that I tried. I was happy with it. It turned out nice, but I decided not to make a bunch of those, and that's when I decided to develop the Morpheus tray. Hello, Randy. Hi, Matt. So please post your company name if you're a holster company and share the feed to get entered for the ashtray. Tonight's topic is pretty large. I actually have 2 full pages of typed notes. Hey, Matt Booth. And so without further ado, I'll get right into it. What is OEM? OEM is original equipment manufacturer or original equipment manufacturing. And it simply refers to a business arrangement where one company manufactures something for another company to resell. This is B2B, business to business, rather than B2C, business to consumer. I see 3 kinds of OEM happening in the holster field right now. I'm going to break them out into 3 different types, talk about some of the specific trade-offs of each type. But before we get into that, the overall benefits of OEM. Scott, thank you for stopping in. Even though you don't make holsters, I appreciate you taking the time to watch my business feeds. OEM has, across all industries where it's used, has certain major advantages. One of the biggest ones is it allows companies to access additional capacity, additional labor, additional equipment, additional inventory of raw materials, potentially additional networking and distribution. The OEM manufacturer may also have a Rolodex, may also have a network and connections to bring to the table to improve distribution of the product. It can allow the outsourcing of certain kinds of highly skilled production and access to expensive or specialized machinery that one company can't afford but that the OEM already has. And so if you had a whole bunch of expensive machines to make a certain kind of product, but you didn't have enough sales to keep those machines busy, OEMing, making things on those machines to sell to other companies at wholesale for them to resell to the public, is a way to keep your machines busy. Hi, John Hauptman. One of the other advantages is that, hey, Clark, if you are the seller, if you're the one receiving OEM product and putting it out into the market, having somebody else responsible for actually manufacturing it can insulate you from some QC problems in the process. I do OEM. I offer OEM to other holster companies. And one of the things that I always point out when they're weighing the is OEM right for me question is that when it comes to OEMing product, if they have a problem with the product I send, I replace it. So if I make them 50 holsters and something's wrong, I eat that and make those again. And so there's a heavy incentive on me to ensure that QC happens regularly, consistently, so that the end, the end consumer gets good product and the seller doesn't get caught in the middle left holding the bag Hey, Tyson Lamb, Lamb Tactical, I asked you on the Instagram feed to DM me your address so I could send you a big sticker, and as far as I know, last I checked Instagram, you didn't do it. So send me a DM on Instagram with your mailing address, and I'll put a big sticker in the mail to you. In the meantime, while you're here on Facebook, share the feed, and you'll be entered to win this sweet billet tray. So, OEM allows a company to have access to labor, materials, equipment that they don't have themselves and may not have capital or space or skilled labor for. A great example of this is sitting right behind me. Okay? A lot of small shops want to get into CNC but don't have this kind of machinery. Hello, Nick Hoffer. And for companies who want a higher volume of product and want the consistency and precision of CNC drilled holes and CNC trimmed outlines, OEMing them gets them access to that quality without having to buy and learn to use the big machine. For me, on my end, it gives me more fairly simple parts to run on an ongoing basis to keep my machine busy. Because this machine right now is making no money for me. CNCs don't make money when they're off. Does it make sense for a shop to send CAD files to avoid buying an entry-level CNC? Todd, I would say no. I would say if a shop doesn't even have an entry-level CNC, that it's unlikely that the CAD files that you guys are going to send are going to be ready to go without significant revision anyway. I think one of the biggest advantages of a small shop getting into a basic CNC package, a desktop CNC, it's not that that machine is going to rock their world and turn everything around for them, but that machine will enable you to gradually absorb R&D costs and try things out. When you have an idea, once you've got some basic CAD/CAM chops and you have a machine, even if it's not super high performance, it doesn't go really fast, and you have to do manual tool changes, and so making a mold takes a while, even there, 3 or 4 hours of time, if you had a tiny desktop CNC, if you're in the shop doing other stuff and that machine's just running that for 3 or 4 hours, that still saves you probably time and money over outsourcing development. Outsourcing development is challenging. Love your holsters. Thank you, Sean Downs. Currently wearing one. Awesome. I love it when my customers stop in and watch the live feed. I used my X-Car for several months. While it wasn't fun, it worked for prototyping. Yeah. If you're just going to make CAD files and you don't have the ability to make physical test molds out of them, then it's unlikely that the files you make are going to work. You can 3D print and test, but in my case, as an OEM, if you wanted to send me files, I wouldn't take that business. Because if you don't have a CNC and haven't tested them extensively, it's often harder for me to fix somebody else's file than it is for me to build a fresh file from scratch. And anybody who's got chops at CAD has experienced this. I'm not saying I've got awesome chops, but I work pretty quickly. I can build a mold pretty quickly. Oftentimes, the way that somebody else built something makes it way more work for me to go back and adjust their thing than to do it over. Outsourcing development requires having multiple simultaneous projects, says John. Hello, Jamie Lowe. John Hoffman commented earlier that one of the big advantages for him of OEMing, and full disclosure, I am John's main OEM. All the current V2 skeletons all come out of my shop. They're all run here. John does all the edge work and the assembly, all the packaging. I do, and my employee does all the forming, all the drilling, all the trimming, and then we ship those bulk Kydex parts to John. Local police stopped by, Jamie. I hope it was for a friendly cigar and a chat. But do share the feed, Jamie. You'll be entered to win this sweet billet tray, which will go very nicely with the Cerakoted Morpheus tray that I'm sure you're going to buy. Counting on it. And so if you are a small shop and you want access to more capacity, finding somebody to OEM for you may be a more realistic solution than buying or renting bigger space, buying your own CNC and teaching yourself to use it, or hiring an employee or employees. Okay? One of the nice things about OEM is it's a fixed cost. And this is a big deal because these are much easier to catch, says Chris Johnson. Yeah. Well, I mean, this thing's like an hour long or more. Chris Woomer, Veil Solutions in the house. Hey, man, how's it going? Is your oil mist kit helping you out? I hope you received it by now. I shipped it a while ago. Chris, if you just joined, share the feed. You'll be entered to win this cool machined billet cigar tray that I made. Open-ended things can be very unpredictable. If you're a small shop and you're going to teach yourself CNC, you never really know when you're going to get to the point where you're actually making back all your sunk costs and the efficiency is starting to produce additional profit for you. If you pay somebody else who's already got the equipment, already got files, already got the chops to make that workflow work, and you're just buying their finished product or their mostly finished product, the OEM product, then you can get much more done quickly with a lower startup cost, usually. But we'll get into that when we get into the 3 different kinds of OEM. Some of the trade-offs of OEM, the big downsides, are OEM can introduce new supply chain problems. Anytime you have more links in the chain, there are more opportunities for things to go wrong. Okay? There's a greater need for clear communication. If you're OEMing, you should have clear business agreements or arrangements hashed out in writing. Doesn't have to be contracts, but it's the kind of thing where you want to have terms so that everybody's on the same page. The end user, the person buying the product, finished retail product, could potentially be subject to double jeopardy in terms of lead times, because there may be a delay getting raw material to the OEM, and then there may be a delay at the OEM making the parts and getting them shipped to the seller, and there may be issues at your end, if you're the seller, getting the parts finished, packaged, shipped to the end user. It's easier to track costs with OEM, I've found, says John, and this is one of the other real nice things about fixed costs in OEM. When John buys a skeleton shell from me, whether it took me 2 minutes or 20 minutes to make, his cost doesn't change. My labor is on me. Hello, Tom Crawford. Blade Tech is in the house. Hey, Tom, I'm giving away this cool billet machined cigar ashtray, so share the feed if you want to be entered to win the tray. That insulation from fluctuating labor costs is big for a small business. If you knew that every week you could get 50 units in your hands at a fixed cost per unit, no variation, everyone costs you exactly the same. If I as the OEM have a bad day, so last week I had a bad day and I was working on these. This is an OEM Filster Classic. Okay? This is the shell as it would go into my CNC. Okay? We do a real quick pre-cut because we mold them in pairs. We cut the pairs apart. I zip off the extra flange acotics on 3 sides, and I drill manually 1 hole per side so I can fixture it on the CNC. Then the other hole gets drilled, everything gets trimmed, and I was having an issue right down here with this corner cracking off when I CNC trimmed it. Blew through 15 or so shells. Tried different machining strategies, different step downs, tried a couple different end mills, tried different feeds and speeds, got a solution that works without chipping, but that was on me. John doesn't pay for any of those shells. And so as the OEM, the pressure's really on me to deliver a high quality, quickly, reliably, because if there are problems, I eat them. On the seller side, the person purchasing OEM, my customer, they are insulated very much. I had the same thing happen, says Clark Trost. Yeah. So for me, it was a combination of issues. I have a lot of vertical draft going on here. And by the way, I really enjoy seeing how influential these designs have been on work like yours, Clark. Ha 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 ha. Dig. But because I was machining a profile with a pretty large radius here to really round this corner off, I was getting a very shallow entry through angle when I finally broke through the back side of this edge and was cracking it out in the direction of the cutter rotation. Savage, says Skylar. Well, here's the thing, guys. We are dealing with an industry where there's cross-pollination and influence everywhere. Was I the very first guy to put a molded-in wedge in a holster? Not that I know of. I mean, I don't know of many others who did it before I did, or any others that did it before I did. But it's all over the place now, and I've seen many, many guys who do a wedge that looks very similar to what I do. So you might think this causes a delay, said John, as a downside here, but this is the advantage of having multiple simultaneous projects in development. One of the nice things also, if you're the seller, you call the OEM up and say, I need 100 units. Yeah, no, Clark, you totally asked. It's fine. I'm just razzing you a little bit because I can. If you say, I need 100 units and I need them in a week and a half, you make that phone call and then you're done. And the units just show up if your OEM is good. I sent Clark some screenshots, you guys accusing me of knocking off his design. Well, here's the thing. End consumers will never, ever, ever, ever keep track of everything going on in the holster community, and they don't know about or understand the relationships between all these companies that know each other, where the owners are friends, where they talk frequently, where they share and collaborate on design elements and make suggestions to each other. Should have trademarked. Patrick, I could have patented that sucker back in 2012 or 2013. I didn't do it. I didn't want to. You know, I could have tried to patent it. I could have filed for a patent in 2013 or 2012. Accused of copying Cherry's. Jamie, I did copy Cherry's apparel. Did you not see my Superfly Cherry Pie? It is a straight up copy. I mean, I improved it, but it was like conceptually, it was a copy. It's like, you know, ankle deep appendix carry. So, other possible downsides to OEM. I mentioned the double jeopardy with lead time. There are more pieces, more moving parts, more opportunities for the ball to get dropped and for things to happen. But realistically, there's no way around supply chain vulnerability. If you're a manufacturer, okay, so 50 years ago, big manufacturing companies had the idea of total vertical integration. My uncle was a lifer machinist for GE in Erie, Pennsylvania, and he was doing, you know, complicated multi-axis boring work building locomotive engines. Big, thousands of pounds castings. Okay? For a long, long time, every casting that his building processed was being cast in the building next door. You know, GE was not buying castings. They were buying raw material, and they had a foundry, and they were casting their own castings and then just putting them on trucks and driving them to the next building and dropping them right off at the boring mills and horizontals that were going to machine them to shape. And then they passed into the next building and started being assembled. That kind of vertical integration is insanely expensive. And for small shops like us, like, you know, vertical integration would be like you making your own sheet plastic so that you never end up out of stock on the colors you want. It's laughable. It's totally ridiculous. None of us has the capital or the equipment to manufacture the raw finished parts or the raw materials or finished products that we need to make our thing. And so you always are going to be in some jeopardy from supply chain issues. Maybe your supplier runs out of injection molded hardware. Maybe their injection molding company burns down and the molds get taken out in the fire, and the person you usually buy your belt loops from has none of them because they've all sold out, their molds got destroyed, the injection mold company went out of business, like the whole thing just went poof. You can't control that, but getting OEM does add an extra link in that chain. So you have to weigh the cost benefit for yourself. And as always, supply chain risk and inventory can sort of balance each other. Hello, Chris Burns. Hey, Ryan. So obviously, like, if you're concerned about sheet plastic going out of stock, buy a bunch of it if you can. There is a real cost. It crimps your cash flow, and it may rob you of opportunity costs. Things you could have done with that money in the meantime are tied up while all that plastic sits. But if there's suddenly another round of sparkle jeopardy, where every sheet that Kydex turns out has a problem and has to get sent back. Well, if you've got 2,000 square feet of plastic sitting around that's good, you can just ride that out while everybody else is choking on the supply chain problem. Hello, Brian Rector. If you guys have recently joined, share the feed for a chance to be entered to win this sweet machined billet cigar tray. If you don't smoke, you can put keys or coins in it. Hello, Brandon Pickett. So, holding inventory helps, but it's not a sure cure, and there are trade-offs. You end up tying up your money. Cash flow is a big deal for small businesses. Tying up tons of money in inventory to shield yourself from potential supply chain problems is a gamble. So the three kinds of OEM that I see currently happening in the holster world, and I talked about this some earlier in the week in an Instagram live video, but it got me thinking, which is why I typed up 2 pages of notes. Three kinds: full custom OEM, co-branded OEM, and generic OEM. I'm going to go through them in order, starting at full custom and working to generic. Full custom, here's how I define full custom. The product is fully differentiated and unique and is only available to one seller. Okay? The OEM and the seller may divide the labor, or the OEM may deliver finished product ready to sell. I am a custom OEM. I don't offer generic shells to anybody. I have no stock design that I just sell to multiple other holster companies. Anytime somebody orders a mold from me or starts OEMing with me, we develop a custom mold and product design specifically for them, and they're the only person who can buy that. That doesn't mean there aren't some overlapping features from brand to brand to brand. You know, I make several versions of holsters and molds that have an integrated molded wedge. None of them are identical to each other, but in principle, they're all the same concept. But only one client has access to it. That's a defining feature of full custom OEM. The advantage of full custom OEM is that the person buying the OEM parts is able to get a thing that's fully integrated with their existing product line. It blends with their established brand. The aesthetics, the cuts, the angles, the trigger guard, retention, depression, shape, open versus closed muzzle, everything about it can be tailored to dovetail it in and fit it in with their existing product line, so that any branding that they've already baked into their products is also built into this new one, and that it's not an odd thing out in their product line. The downside is that there's usually higher upfront costs. Hello, Jeff Kwan. Hi, Adam Johnson. If you're getting a custom mold designed, there's upfront cost to that. There is going through all the actual conceptual things. What are the features? What are the aesthetics? Here are my existing holsters. These are the angles I want. This is what I want the blocking to look like. This is the level of retention I want. This is the sweat guard angle I'm looking for. All that has to be tested out. The molds have to be revised. They have to be tweaked. They have to be signed off on. Only then can you get into actually OEMing the parts. So there's more time involved and more money involved up front to get started with full custom OEM. But the product you have at the end has the potential to bring you greater brand equity because it's distinctively yours. For the company doing the OEM work, full custom OEM has trade-offs. You usually get more money up front because you're selling a custom mold design, but there's also a lot more labor up front before the steady month-by-month OEM, which is really the bread and butter, before that starts happening. The other trade-off for the OEM supplier is when you're doing full custom OEM work, you're usually not getting any brand acknowledgement or equity from it. Some of the customers I OEM for are very willing to publicly say that I make product for them. Some of them are kind of tight-lipped about it and don't want their customers to perceive some products as being theirs and some products that they sell as not being theirs. And so, as an OEM, some of my products bring me brand equity and some don't. Generally, anytime I'm involved in a project where I don't get any brand equity, especially if the project is collaborative and I'm contributing significant design input, I'm not just executing an idea, I'm actually creating the idea I'm designing, then usually in that kind of situation, there's a little bit more financial compensation because the seller is out front getting brand equity, gaining new clients, making further downstream sales, cross-selling, upselling their other products to those customers who have come in the door because of something I helped design, maybe. So an example of this is there's one product I designed and put on the market in 2014. It's a Kydex wallet. And we've sold lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of them. I've made every single one, and it was completely my design. But I brought it to market in collaboration with a distributor who branded it as their product. That was the only way they were interested in carrying it, and they had the marketing leverage and the networking that I wanted to access, and so it made sense for them to brand it and me to have access to cash flow from it as the OEM. It's worked out great. But it has built their brand and has not built mine. That's the trade-off that I knew going in. The OEM can serve as a backline. Full custom OEM does not require that 100% of the copies of that product come out of the OEM's shop. So when I do custom mold work, getting a custom mold from me always opens the door to OEMing from me, because I can make more copies of your mold and make product off your molds in my shop. But what usually happens is, even people I've OEM to, they have their own copies of the production molds at their shop for unusual colors, one-offs, testing, or sprint runs with different options. Say they've got a holster design they really like and their local PD wants 10 of them made, but they want an infused Kydex with their department badge on it. Well, it doesn't make sense to try to do 10 OEM units, and depending on how I'm forming it, that small piece of infused Kydex might not even work for my process, especially if I'm using the big former. You gotta go 24 by 24 on that. And so usually, for most of my OEM clients, they have their own mold copies, and I also make product for them. And in that case, the OEM serves essentially as a backline. The OEM can supply variable amounts of inventory to deal with fluctuations in demand. If the seller gets a big wholesale order, like, this is an outside the waistband. This is a SIG full size with TLR1 mold, integrated wing angles. This is just the front half of an OWB that I'm OEMing. Hundreds of, that particular shell is going to a large wholesale order for hundreds of identical units that the seller, secured that order, and I'm supplementing. In order to make that many identical units, we're going to have them all come out of my shop rather than splitting in part of it in his shop and part of it in my shop. But he'll also have his copies of the mold, so if he needs to make more on an ongoing basis, or he needs a different color, or he needs to do a different thickness of plastic, he can just do it. He's got the molds. My comments have not been moving, and I think I'm probably frozen. So I apologize. I'm sure there are questions. OEM is a big topic, so I'm sure you guys have questions. It appears my comments have frozen. Since I have notes, I'm going to go ahead and just continue rolling with my notes. If you've recently joined, share the feed for an opportunity to be entered to win this billet ashtray that I've got. So the seller can usually make copies of the product in their own shop. I don't currently OEM for any companies that are not holster makers. Oh, tons of comments just blew past. That's good. Whole bunch just popped by. Okay, looks like we're back in. Testing, says Adam Johnson. And so as a backline, I can supplement. If they suddenly have more demand, I can push the gas pedal. I can give them more supply, but they're not locked into 500 units a month every month. I'm not just like cramming product down their throat till they choke. Because if my client goes out of business because they've tied up all their capital in inventory that I've been shoving down their throat, I just lost my customer and that door's closed. That doesn't help me. So it doesn't help me as an OEM to push inventory to my customers in an unhealthy way. Make sense? Their good business, their healthy growth is my healthy growth. we're on the same team. Full custom OEM is usually not a good option for small shops that don't yet have a stable, sizable volume of sales and a good web store or a good dealer or gun store network. Because if you're doing 25 holsters a month or 30 holsters a month, dropping a couple $1,000s on getting custom molds designed and getting OEM set up that can produce 150 or 200 holsters for you a week doesn't make sense if you don't have the demand to meet that. If you have more demand than you can keep up with and you're finding your lead times are creeping up or you're having to turn down significant sales opportunities because you just don't have the capacity for them, then OEM might make a lot of sense. And in a case where you had, say, what would be a great one? Say the Department of Education came to you because they wanted to, outfit one of their TAC teams. DEA. No, sorry, not DEA. Yeah, Department of Education. Say they decided to put their in-service school TAC teams all running your gear, and it was like a $50,000 or $60,000 purchase order, but it was a product you'd have to have a custom mold made for. Well, if you've got a purchase order that size, then buying the mold and getting OEM set up is a no-brainer. Yo, Del Corbett, thanks for stopping by. Your holster is in the mail. Shipped it today. I hope you like it. I'll love to hear your feedback once you get it and try it. Especially if there's anything about you don't like, I really want to know. I'm always most interested in negative or critical feedback because that helps me know what I need to improve. So if you're a small shop and don't have a lot of sales, custom OEM is probably not for you yet, but it may be a good solution for you as you grow, or it may enable you to bite off a big order, a big department order, a big wholesale order, something you couldn't otherwise normally hack through, and enable you to quickly scale your volume of production for that limited thing, that specific order, and deliver it and get a whole bunch more revenue in, which would enable you then to maybe expand your shop, get new equipment, and leapfrog to the next level. Thank you, Del. This is a case where some of the co-branding, some of the brand equity that I got for doing OEM work translated into a customer finding my stuff and buying one of my rigs, because John, who I OEM for, doesn't offer a G34 with X300 Ultra rig. But I do. Co-branded OEM. So an example of a company doing full custom OEM is me. I do full custom OEM. Co-branded OEM is what Clark Trost of CNC Holsters is currently doing with Armadillo Concealment and Triton and a few other guys, I think, probably, where his Caramon appendix light-bearing holsters are being sold by other holster companies, but Clark is still branding them. They're still being called Caramons, and the companies that are reselling them are selling them as CNC holsters. Co-branding is an interesting thing. There are unusual trade-offs in there. So here are a couple of the different ways that co-branding OEM can be set up. First of all, co-branded shops can chop the labor or not. In the case of chopping the labor, it would be, one person designs the product, forms the product, drills and cuts it, but the seller is the one who actually folds the shell, polishes the edges, puts all the hardware on. Or the person who is the OEM may actually be sending over finished product, in which case it's less OEM and it's basically distribution. The second holster company is functioning like a distributor, a wholesaler. Well, they're buying at wholesale, they're functioning like a retail store buying inventory from somebody else. Yeah, Dell, that's accurate. It's kind of a light-bearing Eidolon sort of thing. Booth gets finished product. Interesting. So Clark is doing both. Some of the guys he's OEMing with are buying incomplete or probably 80% shells, and they're doing the folding and things. Armadillo Concealment, Booth has a pretty well-established brand, good sales volume, but he's not full-time. He's a firefighter. And so it makes sense that in Booth's case, the attraction of it is getting sellable inventory in hand that's fully finished and ready to go back out the door right away. The flat pack. This is a product that John and I developed together, and it's branded under the Filster brand. You guys have seen the flat pack. It's a little modular tourniquet carrier. Really, really simple and low profile. The way the flat pack works is we chop the cost of the raw materials. I contribute the loops. We split the cost of the injection molding. We split the cost of getting the mold made. And then John supplies the labor to actually assemble the units. And we split the cost of all the packaging materials. But we basically, as equitably as we can, split up both the work and the inventory costs, and then split the profits. It's more because he has a hard time folding one, says Ryan. Oh! Shared and liked. Thank you, Greg Swanson. Since you shared, you are entered to win the cool ashtray. If you're watching the feed and you haven't yet shared the feed, please do share it. You'll be entered to win this cool tray. And also, if you have a personal and a company page and you share on both, you get double counted, both entries. I need to carry those in my retail storefront. Has a Rats TQ and it's Skylar Gibbler. Yeah, so with the flat pack tourniquet carrier, if you're a holster company, that's a fantastic add-on product. And I know there are a lot of guys out there who make Kydex tourniquet carriers. I've still never seen one that's as low profile as the flat pack. I think it's a phenomenal product. I'm very proud of it. And it's a natural cross-sell product that goes along with holsters you already sell. If somebody carries a thing that can put holes in people, they should also carry tools that can stop bleeding from holes in people. If you carry a gun, you should carry a tourniquet. And so that's the case where we've done all the product development, we've paid for injection molding, we've got a great product, it comes in retail packaging, ready to go. There's already a lot of content out there about different ways to carry it, there are different options for configuring it, it's very versatile. I don't think there's any reason for most small shops to try to go and reinvent that wheel. I think the wheel that we made is really, really good. And dealer pricing is very affordable. So if you're thinking about wanting to carry the flat pack, hit up John and he will set you up as a dealer. I would love to have more and more holster companies carrying the flat pack. It's a product that I completely believe in, and it's not expensive. It's not hard to use. Caramon's been a cool deal for everyone involved. It's brought business to others products, and they also make some pretty solid margin on selling the Caramon as well. And this is where the co-branding thing is really interesting. When you're co-branding, both brands gain brand equity, both can gain distribution, both can acquire new clients. The co-branding thing would make less sense if there was a significant inequality between the size and the reach of the two brands. Like, it wouldn't make sense. Co-branding makes more sense if the companies are fairly equivalent in terms of size and reach, or at least close. Like, it would not make sense for me to develop a product and try to pitch it to Safariland as a co-brand, because Safariland doesn't need my brand equity. They don't need my brand equity. I had come to Andrew to have them CNC cut parts in the beginning, but it became clear to us the product really had legs, and we collaborated and pooled some resources. So yeah, John and I had bounced a bunch of different TQ carrier ideas off each other and eventually refined it down to a flat piece, but the specific geometry, the layout, the hooks, the notches, all those things, largely that DNA came from some other projects I had worked on that involved shock cord, and I was able to adapt what I'd learned from those and make the flat pack simpler to assemble, easier to make, easier to get the tourniquet out one-handed. There were a lot of benefits. But that was cross-pollination from other projects I had been able to develop, which was really neat. In co-branding, each party benefits from increased sales, and the OEM may also pick up new customers who will place downstream orders later for other products the OEM makes. I would much rather have regular ongoing customers who buy a product from me every year than constantly chasing the new customer acquisition. Acquiring customers is a significant cost in energy, in marketing dollars, in time. Repeat customers are gold. And if you can get repeat customers, phenomenal. And as far as if co-branding allows you I think it especially works well in cases where the two companies co-branding offer product lines that don't significantly overlap. If I was making a minimalist, ambidextrous, low sweat guard, open muzzle, cut sight channel holster that was very similar to the Filster skeleton, there wouldn't be there'd be weird kind of dissonance there. Everything I make is folded. Most of my stuff is full-length muzzle coverage on full-size guns. I do a lot of light-bearing appendix. None of my stuff is ambidextrous. None of it's tuckable. Okay, a couple of models tuckable, but most of my light-bearing stuff is non-tuckable. So my products and John's products are pretty different. And so we can co-brand, we can talk about each other's companies and recommend each other for customers without it being really competition because we don't overlap. The only downside to co-branding is it can sometimes, doesn't automatically, but it can sometimes muddy the water when two different brands that are in the same space making similar products, where one is carrying products from the other. It's not so much, your high information consumers will be just fine, but other people may get confused. And people who don't really understand how the OEM relationship is working may think that one company is ripping off or copying or stealing or gray marketing or something like that. So, it's not necessarily all 100% upside, but I think that it has significant advantages. The third kind of OEM is generic OEM. This is where the OEM develops a specific product and it's set, it's done. And then they sell it to any holster company who wants it. You can't customize the design. You might be able to customize colors, and there may be some options that they don't fully finish out. Like if I was selling shells that were trimmed but were not drilled, you could drill your hole pattern. Or if the blocking was oversized, you could play with the ride height a little bit by locating your holes differently than some of the other clients are. But if the overall shape and look and the retention level and things, those are baked in the mold, and especially if everyone's getting the same trim shape, then the product for multiple companies is going to look pretty similar. So this is what Spider Concealment is currently doing, or has been talking about doing, with outside the waistband pancake shells. They had some nice outside the waistband molds made up by Conrad Miller, strong side concealment. That's a big reason why the Carolyn need to be branded as mine as well, because there's a large base of people who know that product. Yes, if the product was already on the market, and then after months or years of it being out there, then you started distributing it through other holster makers, co-branding it makes sense because you've already got brand equity investment up front. If you were bringing a new design to market and nobody already knew it as yours, then you have the potential to weigh the benefits of co-branding differently. If I brought an awesome product to market, fully designed it myself, and was looking to distribute it through somebody else who plays in the same space in holsters, I would consider co-branding it, but if it was going to be fully under their brand and I was not going to get brand equity for it, I would expect that would slightly affect the wholesale numbers, because that brand awareness that the other party, that the seller is getting, is an intangible that has real dollar value, but it's hard to quantify. And so generally the person making the thing should be the one making the most money on it. Okay? It would be very unusual for a seller to be making more money than the person who put in most of the labor and the raw material costs. But each person has to decide what the best fit is for them. Okay? Generally, the more the one party brings to the table, the more leverage they have to drive the price in their favor. So, an example would be if I had a great holster design and Brownells wanted to buy 50,000 of them, I would have a lot less power to negotiate the price on that, because they are bringing phenomenal distribution to the table and fulfillment. And if I want access to that market, I'm pretty much going to have to take it on their terms or not take it at all. In generic OEM, one of the big advantages is very low upfront cost for the seller to get involved. because you're not having to buy or own the mold, you're not having to pay for R&D, and usually if it's a generic mold, you have access to much lower minimums to get on board. Hello, Justin. Unless the seller is better at marketing, Jeff, and that's true in all of these cases. If the seller brings really, really great marketing chops to the table, that is a significant strength that will also affect the calculus on the margins. And you can have all kinds of things where, you can say it's this price at this volume unless we hit this kind of sales goal, in which case the price comes down because we're selling them like crazy, and good job, seller. You can incentivize it any way you want as long as you come up with a mutually satisfactory agreement. There are no totally right or wrong ways of doing this. You have to figure out what works for you. On the generic side, as a seller, having access to lower minimums to get product in your hands, not having to pay for a custom mold design, that's big. And that can make generic OEM very attractive to a small shop that doesn't have great distribution yet. The trade-off is it is much harder to differentiate that product because it is basically identical to product that other brands that are also OEMing from that same, that are also buying from that same OEM are also carrying. One of the interesting wrinkles to this is when it comes to differentiating your product, if it's identical to what other sellers have, this is actually one of the areas where regional and local sales, gun store sales, sales to your local PD, where it's easier to differentiate and sell there than it is online. Okay? If we've got 10 companies and they're all marketing an identical thing on Instagram, you might say, okay, well, we're all pitching the same thing. People will see it, and the other guy's ads may actually help me make a sale because people will see the product and maybe not remember which one of us they saw first, and they might buy from me even though they saw the other guy's ad, I suppose. But when it comes to, good night, Brian. Thanks for stopping in. I hope you shared the feed. If you didn't yet, share the feed on your way out, and you'll be entered to win this cool tray. But in terms of your local market, if you walk into your local gun store and you're selling Caramons, they've almost certainly never heard of CNC Holster. Like if I went to my local gun store here, they've never heard of Clark Trost. Your local gun stores have access to a whole crowd of clients. If they buy at gun stores, they're usually kind of a different demo than the guys who are looking at influencers on Instagram and following specific shooters or trainers for recommendations on gear. It's just a little bit of a different demographic, a little bit of a different client base. But I don't find the generic OEM thing as attractive. It wouldn't attract me as much as a seller of the parts, just because if I'm going to sell something, if I'm going to sink my time and money into advertising it, so Chris Williamson says, so true, and Chris is Spider Concealment or half a Spider Concealment. If you're buying a generic OEM product and you're the seller, okay, this is one of the areas where gun shows are actually probably a great idea, because your local regional gun shows are a place where a completely different demographic shops. Completely different. And if you can get good product in your hand at a price that allows you to make a pretty hefty margin on it, if you were going to go to 4 gun shows a year, and in advance of every gun show you ordered 200 OEM shells, and you spent 2 weeks before the gun show finishing all those shells out, and you went to the gun show with a whole bunch of product, you might sell a whole bunch of it, and you wouldn't have to worry at all about the waters being muddied or a cross-contamination of branding or anything. Like, you got a table, you got your signage, you're there, you're talking to the consumers, they're holding the product, and they either like it or they don't. They buy or they don't. And if they don't buy and you decide not to carry that OEM product anymore, you haven't spent a whole bunch of money on expensive molds, you're not stuck with it, and you probably don't have huge amounts of inventory that you've got to find a way to liquidate. So if you do a lot of regional sales or you have a lot of gun store clients, generic OEM may actually be a really good option for you. Some of my customers who buy custom OEM shells have actually found local gun stores to be kind of a tough sell. It just depends. If your model is primarily based on online sales and online marketing, and you're marketing in the same space where a lot of other holster companies are direct marketing, then the more generic your stuff is, the harder it is to make your brand distinct. But if you're dealing regionally, and if I go to my local gun store, I'm not competing really with very many other big local custom kydex shops. I'm just not. And so I don't have to worry about differentiation there as much, and so generic OEM may be a good solution. One of the interesting downsides to generic OEM, possible, is that the OEM who's actually making the parts may end up cannibalizing some of their own potential sales. If I want the same, that question, Tyson. If I want the same looking design on multiple holsters for multiple models, is the bulk of the upfront cost design or the molds per model? The way I work is that there is a fixed cost per mold design. If you buy multiple molds, usually I give some discounts because some of the design work will translate over. I don't just like copy paste, but if I know what you like and I know how you want it to look, it's much easier to develop similar family products than it is to develop the very first one. So typically some of the cost is defrayed by making similar products and doing multiple molds, but there's still a pretty significant upfront cost to get started on that. 42 gun shows this year, Jim Cunningham. Man, that does not sound fun to me. I don't like going to gun shows at all. It's just not what I like to do. And my particular holster line is not well suited to gun show sales. Okay, I primarily focus on Glocks and M&Ps, and I do a lot of light-bearing appendix holsters. That's not the kind of carry and the kind of holster that most gun show clients, in my experience, are looking for. Okay, gun shows tend to tilt pretty heavy toward strong side hip carry, more toward outside the waistband than my clients usually are. And if you have a whole table but you've only got 4 or 5 models out there, you're going to miss a lot of potential sales. Gun shows reward some diversity. You don't have to be 30 holsters deep on every model, but if somebody's like, do you have something for an SCCY? You're like, well, I've got a couple. They might have limited color options, but if you've got something and it's for the model that they're looking for, you might just sell it right there. So it depends. If you do a lot of regional sales, a lot of local gun stores, a lot of gun shows, generic OEM to help you efficiently and at low cost get a few of those more oddball things onto your table, that can be huge. Chris says, we also have custom options, same mold, buy your own trims, and we OEM for you. Interesting. Interesting. As far as I understand, though, Bobby and Chris, all your OEM is manual. You guys aren't CNCing anything, which I find interesting, curious. I'm going to get over to if you're a seller and you're thinking about buying OEM, and then if you're a holster maker and you're thinking about offering OEM, some things to think through. Hey, Shane Muse, you just joined up. Share the feed for a chance to win this cool billet cigar tray. If you're thinking about offering OEM services, just a laundry list of stuff. I'm going to run through it real quick and then flesh out some of it. How fast can you design? If you want to do custom OEM, realistically, how fast can you get a project done? Are you working nights and weekends? Are you running a part-time holster company? Do you have the ability to really put the pedal down and hustle a product if the delivery time is tight? Another thing you'll have to think through in advance, are there certain kinds of products or certain companies that you don't want to do business with? Are there certain products you won't make? If somebody comes to you and they want custom molds done for a convertible, modular, small of the back or cross straw holster, which things will you say yes to and which things will you say no to? You got to think that through. Do you have capital to hold inventory of materials? If you're an OEM, your supply chain problems are not the seller's problems, or shouldn't be the seller's problems. And so if you're going to offer OEM, then you should probably have a little more capital to stock the plastics you offer in larger quantities, so the sellers who are having to wait on your labor and shipping are not also having to wait on your supply chain. We don't want to stack supply chain if we can avoid it. Do you have the chops to do good custom work, or does generic OEM look like easy money to you? This is a question about motivation and intent. What makes you want to do OEM work? Clark says he's had to turn down some Caramon clones. Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. You have to weigh the benefits and the cost to your own brand and your own product line anytime you're doing custom stuff. Developing products that compete directly with your own products is a trade-off. If you're thinking about getting into OEM, really, what is your motivation? Does it look like low-hanging fruit where you think you can quickly and easily make a lot of money because you'll just make hundreds of identical things and sell them at a decent margin and make a lot of money? Or do you enjoy the challenge of designing and building new things? Do you just like OEM work? If you're a holster maker who really loves B2C sales, you love interacting with the customers, you love answering questions, you love going to ranges and showing off stuff, going to shoot days, going to training events, showing your gear, shaking hands, explaining the product, really, rubber to the road with the consumer, making those sales. If you love doing that, putting more and more and more of your time into being in your shop making hundreds of identical products a month may not be something you want to do. If you are a really gifted seller, you just got it and you can sell, then it doesn't make sense for you to be moving in a direction where your sales skills are going to be put on the back burner for production reasons. If you've got sales chops, sell. Find somebody else to produce. If you think that OEM is just easy money, just waiting to be made, that's a completely valid business motivation, but it's not necessarily going to work out like that for you. As an OEM, there are some unique challenges. It's not just like printing money. How much capacity do you really have? This is a big one. If you're going to have somebody else lean on you for production, how close are you to actually being tapped out? How much room do you really have to produce? If your client got a big order and they needed an extra 200 or 300 holsters a month, every month, would you suddenly cross over the line from being okay to drowning? Or would their lead time suddenly jump? Or do you have enough horsepower and enough available production capacity in your process to reasonably scale quickly as your sellers, as your clients need? Got to turn in. Del Corbett, thanks for watching. Hope you'll enjoy your holster. You owe it to anybody you're considering OEMing for to be very upfront with them about what you can actually produce and what your numbers are really like. Because if you are going to OEM so that they can go out and sell, and they do their part and they go out and sell, and then you actually can't deliver on the sales volume they've gone out and secured, you're not only harming your brand, you may lose them as a customer, but you've harmed their brand too. This is my best topic yet, says Ahmad. Thank you. I appreciate you watching. This, when I've got notes, a lot of info, I tend to be more organized. I should do that more often. When your client wants 500 holsters in 5 days, are those fully finished units or are those 80%, Nick? You know, you have to have, you know, if you're an OEM, you owe it to your customer to give them realistic numbers so that you're both on the same page about what you can actually deliver. If you commit to the job, you have to get it done. Yes, obviously don't, oh, just shells? Oh, dude, you could, 500 shells in 5 days? 80% would be pretty easy, said Clark. Yeah, I'm thinking 580% in 5 days, especially if they're single-sided hybrids, should not be too taxing. I don't really know your process, Nick, so I don't know for sure. So how much capacity do you really have? Do you have a plan for thorough ongoing QC? Or are you just going to be sending large volumes of parts out and hoping you don't hear bad news back? That's a bad way to do it. You should be regularly checking the parts you make before you send them, folding them up, applying full hardware, and testing. But you also have other jobs, Nick. Yeah. I find that being an OEM and doing custom work doesn't really play too well together. Gundo says, I get asked to sell my molds, and while I like helping people out, I don't want anybody else to have the exact same thing I have. Yeah, if you've invested time differentiating your product and developing a particular thing that looks distinctively yours, selling that exact thing may make you some quick money now, but it may harm your ability to brand and grow later. Step up your game, Nick. I got mad love for you, says Jeff Kwan. Mad Asian love for you. So we got to have a plan for QC. Do you enjoy making large quantities of the same thing over and over, or does that get boring to you? I love the process of manufacturing. Process, I geek out on process. Huge process geek. Last night I watched a video from NYC CNC, John Saunders, Saunders Machine Works, his YouTube channel. Go watch his recent video, his tour of Pearson Work Holding in California. Jay Pearson runs a really, really neat, lean machine shop that makes very innovative work holding solutions for CNC machining. But the leanness of his shop, the cleanliness, the organization, and that dude's workflow chart blew my mind. Nothing tells you how to improve the product as much as making hundreds of them. Yeah, seriously, if there's some feature about the product that's kind of a production hassle, and then you make 500 of them, man, will you feel that pain in a hurry. If there's some angle or some cut or some hole that really just doesn't work well, or it's kind of time consuming, you know, every one is kind of a crapshoot, doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them is like, oh man, every time it hurts. Where if you're only doing 4 or 5 at a time, you're like, oh yeah, that feature is junk, but I'll be done with these in 10 minutes anyway, so whatever. If you're looking at an entire day of doing those things, you're like, oh, I gotta do that same stupid thing over and over and over again. It can really intensely motivate you to actually problem solve and design around ease of production. If you don't enjoy a lot of repetitive production of things, OEMing is probably not for you. And then another thing, if you already have an established holster brand and you do B2C direct sales to the consumer, are you going to become resentful or bitter if your OEM work grows and starts taking over your life? Because once you've committed to an ongoing client to supply them the OEM numbers that they need, you are on that hook. So, you know, I have a brand that I'm proud of. HenryHolsters is not super well known. I asked Jeff Kwan for a hard assessment of what my level of branding and brand equity is in the holster space. And his take was that my brand is far stronger on the machining, on the development, on the CNC side in the holster community than my brand is on the actual holster product side. Guys who know about me usually know about me for this stuff: machining, process, tooling. They don't know about me because of my holsters. Looking to outsource my shell production so I have more time to do my custom stuff. Any input on that, Andrew? Jace, depending on the range of your products, either Full custom, co-branded, or generic OEM might work for you. If you can find the generic solution that checks the boxes and delivers the product you want, that's probably the fastest and easiest one. If your product is very particular, you may have to go all the way to full custom, or you may find somebody else who's got some OEM capacity and is interested in co-branding with you and developing and OEMing a product for you in exchange for them getting some of the brand equity from it too. How about we talk tonight after this feed's done, Jay? So you can give me a call or send me a text, 812-369-2266. And we can talk some details and specifics, and I can give you a better, more in-depth answer. Will the stuff you sell dilute your own brand? If you're an OEM making stuff that's very similar to what you're trying to sell direct to consumer also, may dilute your own brand. One interesting thing that I find is I'm relentlessly tweaking my own mold designs. I'm always making little adjustments, very minor, usually indistinguishable, but very small. But they're there. Chris, I've given my number out so many times. I get cold calls and cold texts from holster makers all the time, and I do my darndest to answer and respond to every single one. You know, some guys don't put their phone numbers out there. I do. Risk I'm willing to take. If I have to get a new phone someday, or I give out a burner number or something, call. I'll start giving out Jeff Kwan's number. That'd be fantastic. I'll just start giving out Jeff Kwan's number on all my live feeds. So really be honest with yourself. Be self-aware about your business, what you want to do. Would you be happier selling to consumer and building that brand and being the public face of the company, or would you be happier in a shop running a process, getting it dialed, turning out huge numbers of parts with great consistency, high quality, high efficiency? Which would satisfy you and fulfill you more? That's more important than where can you make more money. It's more important than where you can make more money. No comment, Mike. If you're thinking about buying OEM products, questions to ask, to think through. First, who else has the product? Am I getting into a full custom arrangement? Am I getting into a co-branded arrangement? Or am I getting into a generic arrangement? If I'm buying generic, who else has it? If I'm co-branding, who else has it? Is this going to be exclusive co-branding or not? What are the MAP pricing requirements? Anytime more than one company has the product, pricing can become an issue, because I don't want to be buying something for 20 bucks and trying to sell it at 28 if Chris Williamson is buying it at 20 bucks and selling it at 9. Until he goes out of business, then I make a bunch of money. Who knows? Good night, Jim Cunningham. Enjoy those 42 gun shows. Anytime a brand has wide distribution and a lot of different retailers carry their line, it's very common. In most cases, most retailers won't pick it up if there's not some pricing protection built in for them, and this usually takes the form of MAP pricing. The original company may set an MSRP, a recommended price, but MAP pricing is where the rubber meets the road. It's the minimum advertisable pricing. Usually it's not that the retailer isn't allowed to sell below that price. There may be a cap, a floor below which they're absolutely not allowed to sell, but they're certainly not allowed to advertise a lower price. Okay, so in distribution for holster companies, this is a spot, and I've had long conversations with holster guys who have been trying to pick up wholesale accounts, but are not offering a deep enough discount to really sweeten the deal to make a gun store pick it up. And at the same time that they're offering wholesale at kind of a tight margin, they want to preserve their own ability to do direct sales to consumers and have coupon codes and actual sales. Okay? If I'm a gun store and I'm going to buy from you at a 25% discount, and then 5 times a year you offer a 30% direct discount, I'm not going to pick up your line. It doesn't make any sense if you're going to compete directly with your distributors and undersell them. Okay? So if you're, like my brand, for a long time, my agreement with my distributors was, here's the price, here's what I recommend you sell it at. I didn't specify a map, and I never did coupons. My end of the deal was, I will never undersell you. Here's my direct price. It's always the same. Okay? I sell to them at a wholesale discount, and they're free to sell anywhere in here under my price, under my direct price, and I will never put out a coupon code or a sale or anything that chops them. My coupons never go as deep as my wholesale discount goes, says Jamie. Yeah, that's a good strategy. A wholesaler would be pretty upset if you started chopping their margin with a coupon code that undercut them. The other thing is that when I still had a lead time consistently, I would often refer people to my distributors. If the distributor had in stock what the person was looking for. Like, I need a Glock 19 outside the waistband holster. I'm like, well, you can wait a week or two for me to make some more, or you can order it off this other company's website tonight and they'll ship it tomorrow. It made good sense. But if you're thinking about buying OEM products, how well does the product fit with your current brand or line? If it's very different, then co-branding might make more sense. If it's very similar, you may be able to blend it into your existing brand in a way that makes the transition seamless, so your customers don't really notice the distinction. Okay? Yeah, you are, James Aguilar, always late to the live feed, but if you share the feed right now, you can still be entered to win this cool Machine from Billet cigar tray that I'm giving away at the end of the feed tonight. But be honest about how well it fits with your existing product line. The more different it is, it just affects how you market it, how you brand it, and what you tell your customers about it. Obviously, if the customer asks, is this 100% your design, do you make it yourself? You'd say, we actually collaborated and we OEM that shell, or we actually source those parts from another company and then we finish them in-house ourselves. A lot of different ways to do that, but you owe your customers honesty if they ask. Why are you considering buying OEM? This is an intent question. Are you looking to free up your time to do other things where you provide more value to your business? Are you really great at marketing, but you've gotten bogged down with production and you're thinking about buying OEM to free time back up to do better marketing? Hello, Rue Tactical. If you haven't already shared the feed, share the feed to be entered to win this cool cigar tray. Or are you basically at capacity, you feel like you're drowning and you're looking for an OEM solution to give you overflow inventory so you can start to get your head above water again and shorten your lead times? Or do you look at inventory as a way to bring in complementary products without having to develop them from scratch yourself and cross-sell them to your existing customers? All kinds of different ways of slicing that. Other questions, in addition to who else has the product line, what is the discount? What's the map? Are there volume breaks? Are there, if I buy 20, what's my price? If I buy 1,000, what's my price? What would I have to do in order to effectively market this and hit the best price break available? Are there other costs that I would have to incur up front that are separate from the actual cost of the OEM product? Would I need to update my website? Would I need to shoot new photos and videos? Would I need to redo my Facebook advertising? Would I need to, whatever, would I need to get new packaging? Is this new product a different size? It doesn't fit in my current packaging. You would need to actually assess whether or not there are other costs separate from the OEM product itself that you'll have to pay up front and factor those in. How much inventory can you afford to hold? Are you going to be buying 20 at a time? Are you going to be buying 100 at a time? Are you going to be buying 1,000 at a time? And how quickly can you turn the inventory into sellable product? If you're buying finished parts, how quickly can you package them and get them out to your network? If you're buying 80% parts, how quickly can you finish them? Do you have an employee who can finish them? Like, if I had a shop where I had an employee who was great at buffing, but I didn't have enough work in my own line, maybe bringing in some OEM stuff so I can pump up my web store offerings and my guy would have more and more stuff to buff, and he would just keep humming along day after day, working through bins of parts. That might be a way for you to better utilize the labor and skills and equipment you already have. If Clark sold Caramons to Chris and Bobby, they'd be selling them for $19.99. Yeah, I mean, none of us want to get in a situation where we're buying high and selling low. That's bad business. It hurts. It just hurts. If you're the actual OEM manufacturer, you should protect your clients from each other by establishing pricing guidelines. It protects your brand, and it protects people who are putting their faith in you and taking a risk by carrying your brand. Yeah, Jamie, I think you might have misplaced it also. Hey, Tom Crawford's back. So that's pretty much to the end of my notes. Do you guys have any specific questions? Doesn't fit their product line very well, says Clark. Yeah, it's too multifunctional. Who knows? And still make money. Chris, you and Bobby are the Milo Minder binders of the holster industry. If you guys don't know who Milo Minder Binder was, he's a character in Joseph Heller's book Catch-22, and he runs the mess hall on base, and he's always involved in these crazy trade schemes. And he has one where he's like buying eggs at 7 cents, selling them at 4 cents, and making a 3-cent profit. It's like this totally crazy stuff that defies economics. And he eventually starts outsourcing all kinds of things, and eventually he gets so good at outsourcing stuff that it's a World War II novel that he starts contracting with the Germans, and the Germans start paying him to bomb to organize bombing raids to bomb their own airfield, because it's cheaper for the Germans to pay the American guys to bomb the American airfield than it is for the Germans to fly all the way over there and try to bomb it themselves. It's hilarious. So yeah, you guys are the Milo Minder binders of the holster industry. Sometimes that's how it seems. The syndicate. If there aren't any other particular questions, then I'm going to go ahead and get ready to close it down. I got some CNC stuff to run tonight. This is a pretty big topic, and it may warrant a follow-up video. As usual, I will go through all the comments and answer any that I missed in the course of the live feed, and there may be some that just require some follow-up. So, your favorite holster, your favorite book, says Gundo. It's a hilarious book. When I first read it, my mind was blown. So, OEM, there is no 100% right or wrong answer. You'll have to look at your existing company. What is your brand? Who are your customers? Where do you sell? Where do you advertise? What advantages does OEM bring to you? How does it improve your brand? How does it better serve your customers? And really think about it from the customer side. How does getting this OEM product and passing it through better serve my customers? Is it a thing that I don't currently offer that my customers want and have to get someplace else? Will I make their life easier by becoming more of a one-stop shop where they can get a bunch of different things? Like if I'm selling holsters, does it make sense for me to buy belts and OEM belts so that guys can get a complete package? They can get a holster, they can get a mag carrier, they can get a belt all together and a flat pack tourniquet carrier and have a complete EDC package all at once. Is that bringing greater value to my customer? Don't just think about how it benefits you, like, oh, I'd make more money on this. Like, focus on delivering the maximum value to your customer. And this is all about lean. OEM isn't necessarily lean. OEM can be very inventory heavy, very old school, inflexible. Like, no one wants to get stuck with hundreds of units of inventory they can't do anything with. But really think carefully about how it impacts your customers. Think about how it impacts your marketing strategy. Does the OEM product naturally fit into the areas and the ways in which you're currently marketing, or would you have to market it differently? Would it potentially open new marketing doors for you? Would it allow you to get your brand in front of people that you don't currently advertise to or don't currently have traction with? That might allow you to upsell, cross-sell, get new customers in, and then hopefully retain them over time. Thank you, Ben Miller. Appreciate it. Have a good Easter yourself. Thanks for stopping by. So there's a lot of things to consider. And you can talk to other holster makers about it and say, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Talk to other guys who currently buy or sell OEM and pick their brain about why they're doing it, what they like about it, and whether or not they think it might make sense for you to do. If you have questions about it for your particular case, send me a DM or send me a text. I'm happy to talk to you about it. I'll be as helpful as I can. Obviously, every case is different, and as the business owner, the buck stops with you. So you have to know yourself. You have to know what you want. You have to know what you'll enjoy and find satisfying in the business. And you got to balance out, where can I make the money I need to stay in business? How can I do the work that I find satisfying and rewarding to make myself happy? And then how can I deliver the best possible value and product at the right time to my customers? All those things, they're not necessarily in competition, but if any one of them ends up overriding the others, if you just focus on how can I make the most possible money, you may end up unsatisfied and with unhappy customers. If you focus on how can I do the stuff that satisfies me the most, you may not make money and you might not have many happy customers. And if you focus only on give the customer what they want because the customer is always right, you may not make very much money and you also might not be satisfied. So you got to weigh these things out and find a balance that works for you. James says, biggest issue I have, I try to have stock on production blade sheaths, but then a few weeks later I tweak the design and I end up unhappy with my original stock. Yeah, inventory is a double-edged sword. Inventory allows you to quickly fulfill orders, but inventory can be made obsolete like that. Something changes, design changes, SIG rolls out a new version of the thing, and all of a sudden guys are like, oh yeah, this doesn't fit. You're like, wait, do you have the new 320, the new 320, or the new 320? Because this holster fits the new one, not the original new one, but it fits the new one, but not the new 320. Okay? Inventory can be made obsolete. You might have some feature in your holster you're not totally convinced of, and then you find a way to solve it, and the 30 holsters you already had built, you're like, I don't really want to let those out anymore. That's the risk of holding inventory. And it is a risk. If a product is if I make a slight improvement and I'm happier with it, and the original product isn't bad, I would sell them out. If you discover the product is unsafe or there's a problem with it, then yeah, obviously don't. A lot of T&E comes in. I never release anything like that until I have a really solid design. If a design change is required after that, the current design stays in place while T&E goes on. Yeah, Jamie, I understand what you're saying, but sometimes for me, because I work on so many different guys' custom mold designs, sometimes I have light bulb moments about new ways of skinning a cat that I had skinned satisfactorily before, but I come back and think, man, maybe I should try doing this little thing differently, and I make myself a test bowl. I'm like, oh, that's better. The original product isn't bad, it's not unsafe, but this one is better. So I'm going to test it some more, but I'm going to cease production on the original product and not add any more to inventory while I weigh this one out and decide what to do moving forward with it. So, yeah, having huge amounts of inventory and getting stuck with them is no fun. No one likes throwing away inventory. It's bad for your business. So, thank you guys very much for watching. I will go through the comments. I will go through the list of all the people who shared the feed and do a random.org number drawing for this cool billet ashtray. Thank you guys very much for watching the live feed. I appreciate your time and attention. Have a fantastic Easter weekend, and I will be back on the live feeds next week. My mag carrier design has changed 2 times since SHOT Show, and I still haven't released, says Jamie. Yeah. James, yeah, you'll have light bulb moments, and that's good. That's good. And if the cost of losing, if the cost of a significant light bulb moment is losing some inventory, great. Now that I've moved to an inventory model and I have inventory of almost all my products, I'm still running lean inventory. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got some time free. I'm not going to make an extra 100 of something because I might change it a little bit. Like, some of my designs are pretty straightforward. Like, my basic Glock 17 appendix inside the waistband holster, non-light bearing, it's a known quantity. I could make lots of those, and I'm not going to obsolete that just like that. But say, APLC holsters. That's a new thing. Those are not out there generally right now. There's not a lot of feedback from the market on APLC holsters. And different guys are going to have different ways of skinning that. Some guys are going to do friction fit. Some guys are going to do adjustable. Some guys are going to do fixed. Some guys are going to try to get it to the click. Some guys are not. And so there'll probably be some tweaks and changes and updates to those kind of things as it actually goes out to the market at scale for the first time. When I have an APLC design that I'm happy with. Does that mean that 6 months from now I'm not going to change it? No, I probably will, but I'm not going to build huge amounts of inventory in the meantime. I'm going to hedge my bet and build enough inventory in time to keep it in stock, but not so much that I have to go fill a dumpster with APLC holsters if I make some change. So that's that. Have a great night, guys. Appreciate you watching. Have a wonderful Easter weekend. Bye.